live, baby.
Yeah, okay. Welcome back to the welcome back. This is our second episode of July for a musician and a filmmaker, our podcast. We usually do an album and a movie. Now we're on to the movie.
Or we're not.
We're going to be talking about Uncut Gems from 2019 with
Adam Sandler.
Yeah, Adam Sandler's in it, Julia Fox, The Weeknd, directed by the Safdie brothers. Executive producer Martin Scorsese, which I don't really know.
It was a really good movie as well.
It is, yeah. And all right, I think that's enough of that. This is well, first of all, I'd just like to point out that this is the same year that Joker came out, 2019, and that was a whole debacle. But I do remember there being talks of, like, when they were trying to get Joker made, they were trying to get Martin Scorsese to come on and be a producer, because they were essentially, like, aping his style or taking heavy inspiration from, like, Taxi Driver and Kings of Comedy and stuff like that, and right down to casting De Niro as the talk show host. So it was funny that Scorsese basically said no, and then he turned around and he's like, yeah, I'll executive produce Uncut Gems. It's like, yeah, I'll produce an actual movie and not a comic book movie pretending to be an actual movie.
Hey, don't knock the Joker. That's actually, you know what? No, knock the Joker. It's fine.
Yeah, fuck
fine.
that.
I've come to terms with it. Yeah.
The best Joker movie is called The Dark Knight. Anyway, we're not here to talk about superheroes and supervillains. Although maybe we are in a way. We're here to talk about a certain kind of anti-hero.
A certain ilk of hero.
This is probably one of the 3 movies that stars Adam Sandler.
Like serious movies?
Period. No, just like movies.
Oh, he's only ever been in 3 movies?
Yeah, and his comedies, those aren't movies. I mean, maybe some of the early ones, but...
Those are excuses to go on vacations with his friends.
Right. And family. Because I think even his most recent one on Netflix has, like, his daughters in the starring roles.
Yeah, I think so. And his wife, I think, as well, or his sister.
His actual wife?
I think his wife... I'm always confused because I think his wife...
Well, he has a different wife in every movie, so...
But I think his actual, like, real-life wife, like, looks exactly like him, like he does. So I keep thinking it must be his sister, but then I'm like, oh, he
well, that's like a married couple thing. Like, some couples are just together for so long that somehow they're, like, physiologically or whatever, just, like, start shifting, and you just become...
mimicking the other person? That's creepy.
It's weird. Have you ever seen that before? Or, like, some people that have been married for, like, 30 years, you're like, why do you guys look so similar?
They start, like, fusing into each other, becoming, like, conjoined twins.
Which is, I mean, because these movies only take a few months to shoot, I'm sure it didn't happen with Adele Dazeem, who plays his wife in the movie. Right.
Although I could kind of see it towards the end, so I think you are onto something.
Maybe. Did you catch my gaffe with her name?
Oh.
I was doing the John Travolta bit. Do you not remember that moment when he introduced Idina Menzel at some award show and he goes, ladies and gentlemen, Adele Dazeem.
Please welcome the wickedly talented one and only Adele Dazeem.
Oh, I didn't know that happened, but that's great. That's great.
I laid a trap card for you and you just...
Well, you know what's funny? My knowledge of her and the event that you're referring to are so limited that I just accepted that name as her name.
That's fair.
I was like, yeah, that's her name. Adele,
well, I know like 3 things about her. 1, that's her name, is Idina Menzel.
Right.
2, she was in Frozen. And 3, she was in
movie.
Uncut Gems. And a Broadway actress. So
yeah, she was in Wicked, I think.
I can't believe they're making 2 of those movies. That's so absurd. It already looks bad enough. You got is it that
they're making 2
interesting of a story that they have to split it into 2 parts?
Wow. Oh, It's like a 2-parter, like this, like with the same actors and stuff. It's not like 2 different renditions.
No, it's like Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2. The story's just so big.
Oh God.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
2 times the songs. 2 times.
Why is everything so long? Well, actually, you know what though?
Broadway musicals are like 4 hours, but anyway.
Yeah, the source material is even longer.
Speaking of things that
long movie
you wish would be shorter, it's Uncut Gems.
Uncut Gems.
Because even though they fit so much in, like
it's uncut.
It's still like nearly 2.5 hours, and your heart rate never really gets to rest for more than like a minute or 2 at a time.
Yeah, it's anxiety inducing for sure. It's well, let's talk about. I mean, do you imagine that anyone that listens to our show has like not seen the movie that we're talking about, or do you think that people would listen to kind of like just either reinforce their own beliefs or just out of curiosity see what our take on a movie is that they've seen? I'm saying this because like I'm wondering how much like information about the movie we can say if somebody like was listening to it and had never seen it, because it is one of those kind of movies you want to go in kind of blind.
We could start by saying we're going to spoil the movie.
We're going to spoil the movie, so
that should filter out anyone that hasn't seen it. But if you're someone that, I don't care about spoilers, and you just listen to whatever media discussion because it fills the background noise, what I have to say to that is, now they're paying attention. Hey, we're going to spoil Uncut Gems, so if you haven't seen that movie and you're listening to this, don't listen.
Stop listening and start watching.
But I think it's also like this movie's almost 5 years old. And I think...
Is it like one of those things? If you haven't seen it by now, then you deserve to have it spoiled for you.
What also feels like we can kind of talk about how it seems like it's the end of a specific era for the Safdie brothers in general. Because this was basically the last project they worked on like day to day as a directing, producing duo. And now everything they do is like... Benny did The Curse. Josh had no involvement in that. And then Josh was over here like producing like Telemarketers, the HBO documentary, and a couple other things. Oh, they also produced Renfest by your favorite filmmaker, Lance Oppenheim, who made Sperm World.
Sperm World, my favorite.
Actually, it's called Ren Fair, not Renfest. I guess I was too hopped up on caffeine white boy style to remember. But anyway. Yeah, to get back to what I was saying, like the Safdie brothers, this was kind of like the culmination of the previous 10 years of their working together. They had like, I think 4 or 5 features that they made up to Uncut Gems before that. So the whole time they were trying to get, like from 2009 to like 2017, 2018, they were trying to get Adam Sandler on the project. And they like reached out to his to his agent and everyone like numerous times, and he kept turning down the movie. And they said the script went through like 150 or 160 different drafts from like start to finish. Not like every single 160, drafts was a full page 1 rewrite, but just constantly rewriting on the fly. Like even listening to the commentary, they were like, every time every 4 or 5 scenes, they'd be like, yeah, we rewrote this right before we shot it, like during the lunch break on that day.
That's so crazy. But so like it took 10 years to kind of finally convince Sandler to get on board. So
to convince Sandler and to also convince some studio to give them the money to make it on the scale that they needed to.
Oh, okay. Because I was wondering, like, what do you know what the final straw was where Sandler was like, all right, fine, it's been 10 years, like, I'll do it,
I think it was basically
was it just persistence?
Yeah.
It was.
I think it was, but I think it was also that like it might have just been one of those things where like they reached out to his manager, but his manager never actually brought it to him and just said no on his behalf. And it wasn't until Sandman actually read the script that he was like, yeah, let's do it. That's my best Sandler impression.
Pretty good.
The only phrase I've really been able to get close to is, what are you doing? Which might as well be his catchphrase from his comedy movies.
Be, yeah.
Should we just start at the beginning of the movie instead of meandering?
Sure.
Randomly?
Yeah, we can start at the beginning. This movie follows a jewelry store owner named Howie.
Howard.
And,
Howard Ratner?
Ratner? Really?
Yes.
That's funny.
Like,
I feel like that's the first time I'm hearing his last name.
Yeah. Because I think Howie Bling is like his nickname. And
right.
And the first track on the soundtrack is called The Ballad of Howie Bling, which, by the way, amazing soundtrack to this movie. If you guys haven't checked out One O Tricks Point Never already, this should be the thing that gets you into his stuff, just because it's so like.
Do you feel that this like soundtrack accurately kind of like? Do you think if you were to get into One O Tricks Never, A Point Never, like back catalog, do you think that it would like hold up, or do you think that like he kind of did something slightly different here, so it might be a bit of a weird journey?
I think the more like grand sweeping stuff, yeah, for sure. I think there's also a fair amount of like the heavy like driving pounding beats in some of his stuff, like on Returnal or the other one. He has like 3 albums that all start with R, so it's really hard to remember what. I think R+7 is the other one.
Right.
Anyway, so
Anyway.
I would say it does. And plus, it's like he also did the soundtrack for Good Time.
Yeah.
Which came before this. Which they, I think, only got made because they were having trouble getting Sandman and the money for Uncut Gems. And then Robert Pattinson reached out to them and was like, hey, let's do something. And then they wrote Good Time like in like a 3-week period or something like that. And then just like rushed it into production to get it made. And then that ended up getting them the recognition and clout they needed. They both got on Sandman's radar. I think they said it was like at the premiere of that movie where he got in touch with them. Wow. And then, A24 was they were already in A24's good graces. So
makes sense. Yeah. It's funny. I think the word schmuck is like probably the best word to describe this character. Like not even just schmuck, but like a poor schmuck, Like this poor schmuck.
He's a poor rich schmuck.
Yeah. But like, but he's poor in the sense that like you feel sorry for him,
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I think and it's like that's kind of the character arc, I guess, is like you're constantly trying to figure out how to feel for this guy, because it's like you do feel sorry for him, but he is like a sleazy guy.
You still want him to succeed.
You kind of want him to succeed, but you feel bad for him. It's
you
like
feel bad because he can't stop getting out of his own way. That's his main character flaw is that
he's constantly digging himself deeper and deeper into his shit, and like it's frustrating to watch. But I think it's also because like you see like right when the movie starts, it's like those 2 guys come in and they're like slapping him in the face. People in the store are like, is everything good? And he's like, yeah, it's fine. But he's getting humiliated in front of his staff, and it's like, I think it touches anyone that's watching it to be like, oh fuck, I feel bad for this guy. Like he's a like slimy like jewelry salesman guy, but I think as
the movie goes on, it's like a sine wave of like feeling bad for him and not feeling bad for him.
Yeah, 100%.
Because there's some points where you're like, you fucking idiot.
Yeah. Oh, 100.
But then other points where he's literally just backed up against the wall, and it's also like, it's all because of his own doing. Yeah. And he literally can't like there are numerous scenes in this movie where like something that he does makes the situation worse when it probably would have resolved itself had he not done that.
Well, he basically always gets the money that he needs.
Eventually.
But he always has some money, but he insists on gambling it every single time. And it's just like, you could at least take that. He just wants that
bigger
portion.
and bigger.
Yeah,
hit.
Exactly.
He's essentially like a degenerate gambler, but with other people's money.
With other people's money, yeah. So I guess the movie follows him, and he owes money to his like brother-in-law.
His brother-in-law. I think it's like his wife's dad's, like his wife's sister is married to Arno, who is played by Eric Bogosian.
Right. Is he?
I didn't know until I saw him in this, and then I saw him in Succession. I was like, why does that guy look so familiar? And then I realized it's just they dyed his hair black for this movie. So
he's got a fantastic face. That guy does. I gotta say, he's born to be like a mob.
He was born to be in the Safdie Brothers movie. That's for sure.
He was born to be in this movie for sure. Yeah, born to play this role. His eyes are always like just kind of like wet.
He's always sweating.
He's sweating,
and he's just like old enough to where that he's just like, tired of everything that he's having to put up with. And we're starting to talk about how this is one of Adam Sandler's like handful of actual movies and not just a generic, slapstick comedy.
Yeah.
I think Click is somewhere in the middle there in the Venn diagram, but it's mostly a circle. It's just a very tiny sliver where Click is right there in the middle. But he is fantastic in this movie. Adam Sandler is incredible in this movie, which is not a sentence I never thought I would ever say, other than maybe Punch Drunk Love. But like this movie, he is just completely unlocked.
Yeah, no, it's. I would even say it's better. Like, well, I mean, like what his delivery is in this movie is it's so much more than what was in Punch Drunk Love. Punch Drunk Love's amazing, but like,
right, but he's very much like he's like the inverse of Howie, other than like a few moments of unfettered rage.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. Actually, it's like the complete inverse, because like he's got he's holding back.
He's afraid to take what he wants in that movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And lets people push him around. And in this movie, Howard lets people push him around up until a point, and then he does something stupid like slap the guy who's then going to hang you out of your own window, your own office window.
There's
But I was like, I knew that this was never going to happen, but I was still genuinely disappointed when he didn't even get like an Oscar nomination or like, I don't even think he got a Golden Globe nomination or anything. Like all the major awards circles, for some reason, even when the Safdies play ball, they all get shut out, except for Telemarketers that got a nomination. But that's not
has
even really
Adam
their
Sandler
movie.
ever been nominated for anything?
He might have been nominated for
a
Punch
Razzie?
Drunk Love, but
Oh, yeah.
He's won. Are you kidding me? He set the record for most Razzie wins in 1 year
really?
with Jack and Jill. It was like
Oh, of
11
course.
wins. They swept the entire, and he
I
won like
forgot about
worst
that.
actor, worst actress, and worst screen couple for him and for playing Jack and Jill. And I think they
And
even added
well-deserved.
a new category for that year that was like worst movie of the decade, just so they could give it to Jack and Jill.
Well, it deserved everything that it won. It deserved all of it. I don't think I've seen
Because
the
it's
whole
not a
movie.
movie; it's a product placement delivery system. And this movie kind of has a little bit of that, but it's also like you're making a $20 million movie on the streets of New York. You got to.
This movie
get a little
was
bit of money.
sponsored by the company that makes Furbies. What is that, Mattel or something?
Oh, probably. Hey, speaking of,
Oh, what is that? What?
it's a miniature golden Furby whose eyes don't move, like the
Where'd you
one
get
from
that?
the movie, kind of like. So there's a story behind this. We'll talk about the movie more, but so I saw this movie in like I think it was Christmas 2019 when it came out. I saw it like the second day it was open and saw it with a packed crowd. Loved it, and then time passed and we got to February 2020. Oh, when times seemed so happy and optimistic. They were re-releasing the movie basically for like awards consideration. I mean, it didn't work, but they still re-released the movie and they were like, hey, if you come to one of these screenings, you can win a miniature gold Furby, one of a kind, with the A24 and Elara. Not one of a kind. It was probably like 50 of a kind, but
Close enough.
yeah, I mean, one lucky person. So I went to the first, they had 2 weekends that were both on Sundays where they were re-showing the movie. I went to the first screening, got through the whole movie. They had a Q&A bit at the end that they shot like after the movie had come out, but before they re-released it with the Safdie brothers and Sandman and Jason Bateman in a cafe. And then that was cool. But then we got to the end of it and I was like, what about the sweepstakes or the whatever you want to call it, the contest.
Sure. Contest, yeah.
The luck of the draw. And then I went out and I asked the manager and they were like, oh, yeah, I guess we're going to do that next weekend. Hey, by the way, unrelated to that, what's your name and phone number real quick? And then I gave that to them. And then I came back the next Sunday, bought a new ticket, sat through the whole movie again, sat through the Q&A again. But I think it was like right as the Q&A was starting, one of the employees comes up and they go, hey, are you Greg Phipps? And I go, yes. And they go, hey, guess what? You won. It's like, I can't help but feel like I rigged this a little bit. It seems
I mean, the fact that they pointed
little
you
unfair.
out, like they knew you by your face.
right. But it's like, am I the
But you
only
gave them-
person that bothered to show up twice? You know?
Were you wearing something like particularly like
I don't think so.
strongly identifiable?
Maybe I was probably still glasses, beard, and I think at that time I was in a blue hat, not a green hat. So
That would have done it, yeah, for sure,
yeah. But
for sure.
still, I was like, oh, cool. And then I was walking on air the rest of the day because I was just like, mission accomplished. So now
It's so cool.
I still keep this thing around.
Do you ever wear it out of the house?
No, because I don't have the right event to. I did
What is the right event?
when Uncut Gems was in IMAX like 2 months
right,
ago.
Yeah. That would have been.
And I
the right
bought a
event, yeah.
ticket and I took a nap and I was like, okay, I'm just going to wake up and leave. And I'm going
This
to
is a
set an
sad
alarm.
story.
And as soon as I wake up, I'm going to get in the car and go. And then I slept through my alarm. And by the time I woke up, like the movie itself was starting, 45 minutes away or whatever. And I was just like, well, fuck. I just missed it. So I missed my opportunity to wear this out in public. But,
Is there another like what would be another scenario? Where is that the only scenario? Is just
if I was
going to
go to a
screening of-
club like the one in the movie, maybe. But
Right,
that's like
right.
the opposite of the place that I ever belong, unless I'm like part of a film crew that's shooting something there. That would be like the last place you'd find me. But
Fair.
maybe if I'm doing a Howie Bling cosplay, maybe.
Yeah,
have the
there you go.
opportunity.
For Halloween, you could dress up like Howie Bling.
That's where I go to that's what I go on Halloween, is to the club.
Yeah, there you go. Right. So yeah, the he owes money to various people, not just the brother-in-law.
But the biggest amount is 100.
That's the biggest amount, 100 grand. And so he has acquired.
But why
this
does he owe? Why does he owe his brother-in-law $100,000, Jordan?
He took a bunch of money from him early before the movie began, some point in time, that he's been saying he's going to pay back. Was it to start up his jewelry business or something?
No, it was to buy the gem.
It's to buy the gem. Okay.
Yeah, from Ethiopia.
Right. So he buys that gem. The movie starts off with some pretty cool cinematography in Ethiopia of these like miners excavating and then getting.
They stage an accident to basically have two guys sneak go
out
back to
this
the
opal.
like mining spot and dig out this like uncut black opal diamond, which is like super rare and expensive. But it's like, when you look at it, the specific diamond, it like has this crazy like lighting effect where like if you get a cut one and you shine it in the light, it's like iridescent. It almost works like a prism almost.
Right.
So it's just this beautiful, ever-changing color glowing thing. And once you start looking at it, you don't want to look away.
Yeah, it's hypnotic. So we learn about the gemstone kind of. And then there's a very interesting intro title sequence where we go inside the gem and see all of these like prismatic like color spectrums, and it's almost like you're flying through trippy fucking nebulas and shit. And then it gradually transforms into, well, it's funny because I don't know how your reaction was, Greg, but I started to think, man, this is starting to look like the inside of an ass. And then it was like, oh, this is.
It was, yeah. You find it pulls out to be his colonoscopy. So it's very interesting that the movie starts inside of his ass.
Yes.
And then spoilers, it ends up going back inside of him through his face.
Yes. Both ends.
Yeah.
What's the saying from the People EP? People, you gotta wash them at both ends.
Always gotta wash them at their ends. I don't think they say both ends. That's a little
right.
This is Animal Collective we're talking about. Children still listen to this.
Anyway, yes, it starts off with the colonoscopy, and
it just goes right into it from there, basically. Like the second that he's out of that colonoscopy, he's shouting at someone on the phone.
Hey man, who the fuck you think you're talking to?
And it's just a nonstop like stream of consciousness throughout his day.
Goes back to his jewelry store, and he's meeting up with the basketball player,
Kevin Garnett.
Is Kevin Garnett, who's legitimately played by Kevin Garnett, who is legitimately a real
playing himself.
NBA.
Oh, we should also mention this movie's set in 2012, specifically set in 2012, because it's when the Boston Knights, what are they called, the Celtics, were in the NBA like semifinals. And so it was like right at the time where they were basically like ramping up, and they were getting to like a game 7, which means that they were constantly like on the verge of winning or losing the whole thing. So that tension is going throughout the movie as well. It's like the 15th subplot of the movie, which ends up becoming the main plot at the end. But
totally. So yes, we meet this NBA All-Star and his posse, and he becomes like immediately infatuated with the gemstone. And yeah, in a very, like, I think this is the first moment where you begin to question whether or not you're going to like or be able to stand behind Adam Sandler's character, Howie Bling, is when he's like, he basically makes this short-term like loan plan.
Well, the whole thing is that like the gym just happens to arrive at the exact same moment that Kevin Garnett is there, just for whatever reason. And then he's like so excited, he's just showing everyone, not realizing, hey, NBA superstar who always gets everything he wants. Check this out. Sorry, you can't have it though. It's mine.
Yeah.
Like, so that's kind of just
first stupid mistake.
But Kevin Garnett, when he shows it to him, he's like, oh, these Ethiopian Jews in Africa are the ones that discovered it. And it's like, there's like this mystical power to it and blah, blah, blah. So he sells Kevin Garnett it without meaning to sell it to him, because he actually has it set up for an auction at like Tiffany's or something later in the week, or like the next week. And so then that kind of pisses Kevin Garnett off. So, but he has like this whole moment where he looks into the rock and he like memories of his childhood flashback, and it's like he can just like see the whole universe in this thing. And so both now Kevin Garnett and Howard Ratner are equally obsessed with this uncut stone. And so He essentially is like, hey, let me borrow it so that I can do better at basketball since I'm, like in the NBA semifinals. And Howard's like, Howard is so impulsive and such a people pleaser that he agrees to it. But with Kevin Garnett's like championship ring, I can't remember what year it was, but like the Celtics have won the championship numerous times. So he has that ring that he gives him as collateral. And then Howard, as soon as that scene is over, he immediately turns around and goes out to another pawn shop and pawns it for like 35 grand or something.
Something like that, yeah.
And then he takes that money and he goes to his bookie. Meanwhile, the goons, for lack of a better word, that Arno hired, his brother-in-law hired to get the money back, or to like, because he's done like dealing with Howard directly. He's just like, I'm just going to hire some muscle and have them do it. And so they're watching him go from his diamond store in the Diamond District. We should clarify, this is a very rich part of New York. And the main reason that the Safdies made this movie is because their dad was basically like Howard. And they had like all these different types of characters and people that had businesses in the district that they grew up around. And that's what they did research around and while they were writing the script and rewriting. And so there is a guy that they directly based Howard off of, who's actually in the movie towards the very beginning. It's when Howard is coming out of the elevator and the goons are getting like slapped out of his store because Kevin Garnett has just shown up. And then the guy that comes out of the door in the hallway is like, hey, what's going on? There's people screaming. I got customers in here. That's the guy that Adam Sandler followed around to model Howard, the character, off of. And the little loop, like, I don't know what they call it, a loop or something like that. It's like a little eyepiece that they use to look like, it's like a magnifying glass to look at jewels or whatever with. That was that guy's actual thing. And Sandler's wearing it the whole movie. And they said it was like, he said it was like asking him to like leave his child behind for like months while Sandler is just wearing it on his neck. So there was a lot of like real world influence. It's like as grounded of a movie as you can get while still having this like larger than life like stakes that builds and builds as the movie goes on.
Yeah. And like in that Q&A like short film basically that they put together, they also talked about how some of those other like the pawn shop guys are like real pawn shop guys and stuff like that.
The guy that they go and he pawns because at first he pawns the Michael Jackson pendant, and then he goes to another pawn shop and he pawns the Kevin Garnett ring. Yeah, those guys were really like, that was just them in their own business doing what they would normally do. And there's like so many people in this movie that are just the real people. Like they said that the guy with like the weird nose that delivers them the fish and the UPS parcel or whatever, that's the real guy in the Diamond District that delivers these high value packages to everyone. So the fact, and they said that like he like literally just works every single day of his life, like maybe 6 days a week or something like that. And they said to even get him to be on set to shoot this was like asking a lot, because he has all of these clients that like rely on him to deliver these like $1 million artifacts. So
that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
And the guy on the street who's like, you borrowed 35 grand from me for the games, and then he gives him the fake Rolex and all that. Yeah. That guy was actually in like one of the Safdie brothers' first short films.
Oh, really?
So they've just been accumulating these weirdos over the last decade, just finding people on the street. The guy that plays the lead, I think pretty much every one of Arno's goons is just, that's their backstory. They found them like in the subway or on the street in New York. And they were like, wow, you have a great look. You should be in a movie.
You look like a goon.
You look like a weird, crazy person that would shoot someone in the face.
I mean, I guess we don't need to go beat for beat through the entire movie, but...
No. I do want to point out that Kevin Garnett was not the original basketball player that they had in mind.
No?
Originally, they were going to get Amare Stoudemire, because that guy was actually converting to Judaism, so they were going to tie it in even more. But then I think it just didn't work out. And then they were going to get Joel Embiid, but then that also didn't work out because of the like NBA season schedule. Kevin Garnett was like, I think, freshly retired, and so he was able to actually spend that time. But it wasn't long enough to where you wouldn't buy that it was him in 2012 for real. He wasn't that much older to where it was like unbuyable. So it's just cool how they found all of these elements and everything. This is like lightning in a bottle almost, even though they spent so much time getting it made. I mean, the fact that it did all come together like in this perfect soup-like concoction is like, it's just, It's one of those movies where, like, when you start thinking about how good it is, you just, like, your heart does start raising, like, when you're watching the movie. Because you're just like, filmmaking, you know?
Yeah, for those that are, like, into filmmaking and stuff, this is, like...
It's like a wet dream.
Wet dream come true.
A college film student's wet dream is
absolutely
to be on the set of
Uncut
Uncut Gems.
But it's also it's even for, you know, the lay person, I think it's such an adrenaline rush of a film, and it's like even watching it, like, it's funny because I just always refer to him as Michael Bluth. Michael Bluth, in the Q&A thing, Bateman was I think he made a little joke about saying, like, he watched it twice, and the second time it was more predictable. And the funny thing is that, like, watching it for a second time, even knowing what's going to happen, it's still like
you still get swept
the
up
blood
in it.
rush. Exactly.
I feel like Good Time has that exact same phenomenon too.
And it's
where,
almost
like even though you know exactly how it ends, like even up to like maybe 90 seconds before the movie ends, you're just like, how is he going to get out of it? How is he going to get out of it? You know. And because I had seen Good Time before this, I was like, okay, this is a Safdie brothers movie, so maybe Howie does win the game, but it only ends one of two ways if it's made by them. He goes to jail or he dies. And so that was my reaction when Keith, I think is the goon's name, comes out and shoots him in the head. I was like, oh, okay, that's the one. They picked that one. Yeah. I was less shocked because I was like, well, it's a Safdie brothers movie, so something's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a happy ending.
It is definitely like just one of those quick, like, you know, I don't know, like they snatch back, you know, all that happiness that you just spent so much time like building up with that game.
But you can also make an argument that it is a happy ending. Because if Howard actually got that $1 million, he would have just kept digging deeper and deeper hole.
Of course. Yeah,
and
he would have created new problems.
Self-killed anyway.
For sure. Yeah, it's actually best that it ended up with
he went out smiling, essentially.
He did. Yeah.
Yeah.
He went out of his
on top of the
happiest
world,
moment. He was. Yeah. Yeah.
It's such a bittersweet ending, but it is so good. And I guess plot-wise, it is just kind of a series of like misadventures and like these different threads, like starts and stops. And like he's just the Coke is backfiring on me. I was drinking Coca-Cola to have energy, and now I'm constantly trying not to burp into the microphone. But we're keeping it. It's the chaotic energy of the Safdie brothers blessing us right now. It's real. It's gritty.
Yeah.
It happened.
Well, it's funny because like when I was rewatching this movie for this discussion, I was just watching it, and my wife was like in the house, but she wasn't actively watching the movie, but she could just hear it, and periodically she'd be like this sounds like the most chaotic fucking movie ever.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's funny because, you know, it's one of those things like when you're watching it, you know, you're focusing on your main characters and the main actions. The movie gets you on
its level.
Yeah, it totally, you learn to accept that this is how it is, but it's like, it's so funny because if you close your eyes, you're like, oh my God, this is like stepping out into like a busy like New York, you know, sidewalk and just like hearing 1,000 voices at once and the sounds.
Well,
I
think this is where there's actually a bridge between Paul Thomas Anderson and the Safdie brothers, at least, and not just because they did the A24 podcast together talking about this movie, but because they were both sort of inspired by the Robert Altman style of the overlapping dialogue. Like the Red Letter Media guys recently did a review of Popeye, and I forgot how much of that movie is just large crowds of people talking over each other. Even the main characters getting lost in the mix of just mumbling nonsense. I don't know if you've ever worked on like a film production where there was like 30 plus people around, but that's like essentially what you hear all day long. Like as soon as the cameras aren't rolling, it's just like just like this constant overlapping of voices to the point where after you leave the set and you go home and you're in complete silence, you still hear it in your head because your brain just got so used to it. It's like when you hear a high-pitched ringing tone, but it stops in real life, but you still hear it in your head because it's like,
kinda
I don't know what that is,
there.
but
yeah, it's fascinating. It's a cool technique for sure, and it definitely like fits the vibe of the movie perfectly because it is that constant like tension, and there are so many things happening to this character all at once. It's hard for him to stay on track because there's so much going on.
It's hard for us to stay on track because there's so much to talk about.
It's true.
He's like in almost every scene in the movie, like aside from when they follow Julia Fox's character.
Yeah, they follow her back to the club after,
which is set up pretty early on in the movie, actually. That is something that I only picked up on a rewatch when he's like watching the first game that Kevin Garnett has the gem for on the TV at his house. When his wife comes in the room and she's like, go put your son to bed, your youngest son to bed. And he's like, okay, just give me a second. And then I think it's when he comes back in from putting his son to bed and she's watching whatever she's watching. And then a Mohegan Sun commercial comes up. And you're like, they set it up and they paid it off, but they didn't outright call attention to it. It's just like a background detail.
Nice.
There's so many things that are like perfectly set up and paid off in this movie that almost feel like an accident, but was like carefully constructed. Like especially the like padlocked door or like the magnet lock door, whatever you like, the super reinforced bulletproof door system that he uses to protect the outside world from his shop and all of his valuables. There's like a connection issue that happens, and like probably the most tense scene in the whole movie, I think, is that like 8-minute section where Garnett and his guys are stuck in there, and
yes,
like the phone is ringing with the doctor, and just like there's like 8 different things going on all at once. The other people from the street trying to buzz to get in to collect their money, but they set that up there, and then that becomes instrumental in the finale when Arno and his goons get stuck in there after Howard has. So real quick, the plot is that we keep getting distracted. The plot is he's trying to get it set up for auction, but then all these things keep happening. He keeps trying to get the stone back from Garnett, and their midway guy is Lakeith Stanfield, who is always fantastic. So that's always happening. And then eventually he does get the stone back. They take it to the auction, but it's valued way lower than it should be. He thinks this jewel that he paid $100,000 for is worth $1 million. It only ends up, I think, selling for like 175 when push comes to shove. And he gets his father-in-law to try to up the price, played by Judd Hirsch, in the auction. And then he fucks up and ends up winning because he pushes it too high for what Garnett, who is sitting like right across the aisle, is willing to pay for it. And then immediately he's like, okay, well, I'll wire you back the money plus, 15% or whatever. And then he has to deal with Garnett being like, I still want the stone. Then he gives it to him. And then the money that Garnett gives him for the gem, which I guess Howie has really just lost all investment in at this point. It's really just more about the money. He realizes the value of the stone to Garnett and how when he had it and everything was kosher, he did great. And so he's like, okay, I'm going to take that and make this huge bet, dump all of this money onto Garnett winning the game and the Celtics and all this, and like, lightning bets and extra points and all that. So he does that by like, Arno's goons, they know that Garnett gave him the money and they come to his office. And as soon as they show up, he's like, oh, hey, the money's not here. Because what he did was he called Julia Fox, which, by the way, another supporting character that just basically plays themselves. But she's great in this movie.
She's great. Yeah.
She's hot, but she's also a really good actress for someone that never acted before.
Yeah, so there's a lot of layers to her character for sure.
Yeah. He has her like go to the shop down the hall and then stick her head out that window so that he can hand her this duffel bag full of money. She gets on a helicopter, goes to the casino, and then the showdown of the movie is her at the casino waiting for the game to pass to see if they win or not. Meanwhile, Howard essentially has these guys like trapped in. They were going to follow her to the casino, but then he takes advantage of his fucked up door to trap them in. And it's just like that last like 20-minute stretch where it's just the basketball game. It got me into basketball. Okay. I'm not being facetious. I'm not even kidding. Watching that, I was like, damn, I think I actually like basketball now because I was so invested in the last act of this movie.
That's
so
hilarious.
Props to the Safdie brothers for converting someone who normally never gives a shit about sports into liking exactly one sport.
Wow. That's
as
incredible.
Frustrating as it can be. I think at one point they were like, this movie's kind of like a 2-hour-long basketball game if you think about it. You're constantly like the ball's getting intercepted and turnovers and timeouts and
money transfers. The money is the basketball. It's getting passed around.
Yeah. And then it's also like the rock can be a metaphor for a number of things. And then at the end, Garnett, after he wins the game, literally says like, sometimes it's just you and the rock.
I felt like it was just me and the rock. Nothing else.
Which I think they redid that. That wasn't his actual post-game interview from 2012.
Yeah.
They blue screened him into an arena and then just had him say this speech that they wrote to match up the lineup with the movie. So yeah, real people. The guy at the casino, the like Donald Trump if he had long hair looking guy, that's just a real dude that they met. They said the guy at the casino who Julia talks to, like before the goons show up and she runs up to I think the guy's name is like Wayne Diamond or something like very specific.
Okay.
which perfectly matches that guy's. I mean, he's real, so. The guy that's in the casino, that's just some regular guy, he was just actually there when they were shooting the movie, and they were like, hey, we don't have an actor for this bit. Can you just like, get through this scene and we'll pay you and whatever, which I'm sure that the unions loved. But they have him, and then they have Yussi, the guy who's like the guy, we don't even see it happen, I don't think, but the goons apparently grabbed his shirt and threatened him when Howard wasn't there doing whatever. That's a real guy that worked in the Diamond District. And I believe there was a news story where in real life, the store he was working at, some guys came in and they were like, hey, let's see all these like $1 million jewels. And he goes, okay, sure. And he puts them all out on the counter, and then they pull out guns and they rob him. And they robbed him of like $8 million worth of jewelry. And that's like owned by his dad. And his son just like cost him $8 million. So I believe that every single thing that happens in this movie. I don't think there's anything that's far-fetched because, as we've discussed before, truth is stranger than fiction. So
Certainly is.
The Weeknd is in this movie.
The Weeknd.
What the fuck is the Weeknd?
And for like a half second, we thought he could actually act convincingly. And then he made The Idol, and we all went, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, no. That was just...
he's in this movie just long enough.
Yeah. Well, I also think when it comes to non-actors, having good directors really matters. And it's like...
For sure.
I don't think Sam Levinson gave a shit when he was directing The Idol or any of the... That whole show is just a giant fiasco of behind-the-scenes drama, so I'm not surprised that it turned out shitty. Fucking fuckity fuck fuck fucky fuck fuck.
Fucking
is
that's
how I would relay this movie. This movie, they're constantly saying the word fuck.
Right. Yeah.
To the point where I made my own. There was this trend of YouTube videos back in the day called the fucking short versions, where they would take movies that had a lot of swearing and just like literally do a supercut of just when people are saying the word fuck and squeeze it down until. So I think I did one that was like a 4-minute video. But I waited until the Netflix version came out so I could get the 4K torrent. I mean, I paid for the Blu-ray and then ripped it that way. That's how I did it. Keith tells Howie that he's dead in the first 10 minutes of the movie. He goes, "You're dead, fucker. You're dead.
You're dead, fucker. You're dead."
Yeah, that's true.
And then he's the one that shoots him in the head later. So he was right. So the Furbies in the movie, they said like pretty much everything you see on screen. I think the only thing that was made for the movie was the gym itself, which I think had genuine like actual black opals in it. So it was like an expensive ass prop. I think it was like $200,000 or something.
Yeah.
Maybe less than that, but really expensive. Like, so I'm sure they had stunt ones when he's like getting thrown in the fountain and shit like that.
Sure.
There's just so many like great little lines in this movie, which you can't even tell if they were written or if they were just improvised, because the way that they edited the movie, they just took like everything that they got on set, whether it was captured individually or like as a group. And then just the way that it's edited, every line is just like edited precisely to overlap, but also still be heard, to the point where like people, when the movie was like between theaters and VOD, they were like, how the fuck are you going to put subtitles on this movie? Like, how do you track anything that's being said? And I think what they ended up doing was they just like found out what was the most important line for that split second of time. And then they just highlighted with the ellipses on both sides.
That's hilarious. Because I mean, I've seen in movies before where they do it like, you know, they'll have one character's subtitles on like one side of the screen.
Right.
And then the other characters. So they could have done it like that if they wanted to. But
it would have been too distracting though, because there's already so many cuts.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, just speaking of the editing, another thing that the Oscars snubbed. I mean, 2019 was already a great year for movies, but this just
who won for editing that year?
I don't know. I don't remember. It was probably Parasite or something like that.
Parasite, I mean, it's funny because the editing isn't something that necessarily stood out to me, or doesn't still stand out in my mind's
Well, I'm
eye.
no longer 15, so I don't have my encyclopedic knowledge of who won every single category at the Oscars anymore.
I figured you would know this.
Well, just because I know that they didn't win doesn't mean I fixate on who actually did.
I
I'm
thought
not
you
that
would
spiteful.
be harboring like, you know, some hardcore
No, it's more just
resentment
at the Academy itself.
Right. Okay.
Did you notice that when he says "Holy shit, I'm gonna come," that they took his eyes and then just had him go like shrink slowly with CGI?
Holy shit, I'm gonna come. And fuck you.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, look up a GIF of that and just watch it loop, and you can literally see his pupils just like slowly shrink, or even just the eyes themselves just like shrink into his head because he's so like fixated. It's like it's like the closest this thing gets to being a superhero movie, kind of. It's just so subtle that it's like
so funny.
You can only get away with that once. Did you notice Tilda Swinton is the voice of Anne on the phone?
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's Tilda
that.
Swinton.
That's amazing.
Which is nice that you don't even see her on screen, but her voice is so powerful that you can still feel her energy ruminating through the phone.
That's funny because that definitely does have Tilda Swinton energy. And now that I think of it, like it makes perfect sense.
Have you noticed that every time that a goon shows up to bust Howard for something, there's always two of them? They always come in pairs. Even the guys on the street that have nothing to do with Arno. There's two of them.
Yeah, that's true. There's always two of them. Yeah.
And they said that was that guy's real life brother too. God, yeah. The supporting cast in this movie, like if they had an Oscar for that, not that this movie won any Oscars, but like a SAG award or something, it might have won like best ensemble because it is just so like jam packed full of like some characters only have like one scene in the movie and they're just great. Yeah,
it's true.
It's almost just like it's unfair to actual like auditioning actors that could have played those roles that they're getting outshined by just regular ass people. Maybe that is why the Safdies don't get as much appreciation from like the Academy and stuff like that.
Right.
Because they're like, how come you're not you're trying to do all this outsider art, but you're trying to do it within our industry? Fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. But it's interesting too because like that does seem to be the Safdie style. I mean, even with just looking at The Curse, right? It's like there's a lot of real average non-actor people in there too, but the performances are really good as well. And I think it's also because it's what they're going for is like that hyper realism thing. So it's like it's almost like these people not being classically trained actors is actually helping that because it's helping sell a real world around someone like Sandler, who is a more like, I guess, caricaturized version of like someone that would actually exist in the world.
For sure. And I think that because of all that research they did, he is just like this amalgamation of real people. So I think that it comes through, the heart of it comes through, and that there's so much about him that you can relate to, not just as a person, but that you can like glob onto as someone that doesn't know anything about this world. He is essentially like, the thing that's taking you through the whole experience, like bringing you into this world. You as an audience member, for the most part, are a fish out of water when it comes to this whole world of jewelry and high stakes diamond trading and selling. So he's like the perfect vessel, and they just dive in head first. They don't let you rest for more than like a few seconds. Even in the scene where it's super quiet, it's still super tense.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's like literally almost no moments where it eases up. I mean, it's like he goes through his kid's friggin' play, and it's immediately nothing but tension. As soon as he looks behind him, the fucking goons are sitting
again. Another thing where he can't get out of his own way because they probably would have sat there through the whole play and then confronted him.
Yeah.
But he made it a thing to have them come out in the hall, and then he bites the guy on the hand, and then they start chasing after him, and then Arno shows up, throw him naked in the trunk. That scene is fucking brutal.
It is.
That scene is just so like claustrophobic, and I mean every scene in this movie is tense, but that one especially.
Yeah,
like,
and it really like
we're gonna break his legs or something.
Yeah, it helps like sell the like multi-dimensional qualities to like Arno's character as well, because it's like when they're in the car and stuff, and how he's kind of pleading and stuff like that, you do see this kind of sympathetic side. Which is something that you normally wouldn't get in one of these kind of scenes in like a a crime movie or something.
He's uncomfortable being in the position that he even has to be the enforcer, but he has no other option at this point.
Yeah, he's like, I don't want to. Yeah,
it's like he's still my brother-in-law. I still have
exactly.
I'm still a human. I'm not just a cartoon villain. And like even towards the end, when Howard wins the bet, the Celtics win the game. He's got all this money. Arno is happy for him.
He's stoked. Yeah,
he's like, great. I'm going to get my money, and he's going to get out of my life forever.
Yeah,
like, great. But then he pissed off Keith too much and paid the price. They both did, actually.
Yeah, they both did it. Yeah,
that one I felt. I mean, the impact of seeing Howie get killed, it's lesser so when you see Arno get killed, but you're just like, oh, come on.
Yeah. And then these guys just steal everything. You're like, oh, okay. Could have just done that right from the get-go.
I love the cinematography in this movie. I want to mention. We're not going to get to all my notes because we're going to be here for hours and hours if we do, but I want to mention just how like much thought and detail went into it. These super long lenses in the movie. Well, I was listening to the commentary. They said the biggest one they had on it was a 450 millimeter lens, which if you know anything about lenses means it's fucking 4 feet long. Just the lens is 4 feet long. So you have to have crazy counterbalance. And I mean, it makes sense. They're getting all of these like shots from across the street, like super close-ups, and you can tell they're filming it from the opposite side of a New York street, and just the focus. I think they said they shot it on super 35 millimeter film, which is also crazy. But the focus, they said that they used this thing called, what was it? It had like a special credit. Have you ever seen Robot Monster, Jordan?
Robot Monster? I don't believe so.
It's a really shitty sci-fi 50s movie, but like one of the things in the movies, they have this bubble machine that the characters use, and in the opening credits they give credit to the company that paid for the product placement for it to be in the movie. And they kind of do that with the technology that they use to keep the focus the first AC was using to follow people literally running around the room, especially that shot where Adam is celebrating on the phone and he's literally running in a circle. Like, how do you keep that in focus when you're on these super long lenses? And when it comes to like focus, you really only have sometimes like inches to keep things in focus, or else it just goes completely soft with the type of lens you're using. Hang on, I'm going to look up what it was, because it was just this crazy invention that they were using. It was basically like an iPad app where like you could put your finger on what you want to keep in focus and literally just drag it around the screen. And it's so fast and so high tech that it can just keep it like, so it'll just find the subject and just like remotely change the focus, which I'm so glad that is where the industry is going in terms of technology on focus keeping, because not only is it one of the most important parts of the movie, it's such a fucking pain in the ass to do manually, like up there next to the camera. So I'm glad that they're getting further and further away from the lens during
manual focus. Yeah.
The Light Ranger. It's called the Light Ranger.
That's what it's called.
Which is a great name, but I think it was literally like that. The guy that they got to use it on the movie invented it. And it was like a rarely used thing, and they found out about it, and they were like, hey, come be on this movie and use this technology. Wow. And it really saved their ass.
So he invented that technology. Was it used on anything prior to this? Is it like that cutting edge that they saw him at like a camera
I think it had been
expo?
used on like some documentaries or something.
Okay.
It goes back to like the 90s.
Oh.
So this is like the second version of it. This is, I'm assuming that the technology existed in some...
Light Ranger makes it sound like it would be equipment for lighting more so than for focus pulling.
You can't have good focus unless you have good lighting. It's true.
So, I mean,
like you literally can't see what you're trying to focus on if it's too dark.
That's true. But
I mean unless you use the fucking like measuring tape. But I mean, what is this, the 1940s? So this movie just looks great. Cinematographer Darius Kanji. I'm just going to keep listing crew members that I think should get an Oscar. The fact that Joker was like nominated for 14, like it like set the same record as La La Land with like number of nominations. It's like, that's what fucking Uncut Gems should have gotten. And The Lighthouse, by the way. 2019 was a great year for movies, but The Lighthouse itself, literally only getting nominated for Best Cinematography and losing is just a whole other box of travesties thrown on top of the mix. But the fact that Parasite won everything else, it's a nice consolation because that's a fantastic movie. But
that was a good movie. Yeah.
Why couldn't it have been the one I wanted? I mean, they weren't going to actually give it to Minari in 2021. They should have, but I mean, we can sit here talking all day about what the Academy should have done. Yeah, it's just a great movie. And the lighting, one more thing about the cinematography, the lighting in the club scene, which... you are sort of somewhat demonstrating right now. Do you have an orange hoodie that you could wear that can shine like a spotlight with the black light on you like that?
I don't. I wish. I'll if you can digitally edit one on me.
I can't. I'm not that far in my expertise. But apparently that they didn't show up to set with that. An extra was wearing it, and they were noticing how the black light was like making it shine like a worker's vest or something. And they were like, "Hey, can we borrow that and we'll give you a stipend or something?" And so they just had Lakeith Stanfield wear it for the whole sequence so that he's just like, no matter what, you always know exactly where it is. When Julia shows up post-breakup and she's trying to work things out, but Howard's got like 18,000 other things going on and he's leaving as she's arriving. She's got the smoothie in her hand and he just like smacks it and it goes everywhere. That part is fucking brutal. I mean, I don't care who you are. That's gotta suck.
Yeah. No, I definitely felt that one. That was That was hard.
But
hard
like
to
you could
watch.
tell how he's not a violent guy except for when
No.
he feels like directly threatened. So that felt like a microcosm of just like his frustration at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Something that he knew where he wouldn't have any real consequences from it. And then he goes and he gets his ass kicked like 5 minutes later anyway after the auction. So the one bright spot in this movie is that his colonoscopy results come back clean.
That's right.
The fish had to die for some reason, but he found out that he's got a clean colon. So when he's shitting himself after he's, lost all brain function, it's just going to come right out.
Yeah.
No blockage.
No blockages.
That's what people always forget when people get shot in movies. They shit themselves. A lot of people shit themselves in real life when they die.
You know,
I hope
when
that I have a more dignified thing, like if I'm dying in my bed surrounded by my family, that I just don't immediately, I don't fill the room with the smell of shit emanating from my depends. But
you just have explosive diarrhea the second that you pass.
I don't think it's that bad, but I think the body literally just, like the colon just like releases everything. That
Well, it's like all your muscles just like go limp, I guess.
Right,
so
exactly.
Everything.
Yeah. And
But,
rigor
yeah,
mortis won't keep that shit inside your body, literally.
So would you have found the ending of Uncut Gems more or less powerful if the second that Howie got
As it
shot
was
in the face,
zooming into
it
his
was just
face,
like,
you just hear.
yeah.
Maybe not. If the OPM music drowned it out as it was doing everything else.
Could it like it starts as the farts, but then it like turns into something?
I just want to see a movie where someone shits themselves after they die. I mean, is that too much to ask? I feel like it's maybe been done less than I can count on my hands in history. Or maybe zero, which is less than I can count on my hands.
I saw this movie called Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
That's an awful title for a movie.
Yeah, I saw that movie in theaters with my mom, and spoiler alert, in case anyone has some desire to see Phantom Menace, right at the end when Qui-Gon is like dying and he's talking to Obi-Wan, and like he does
says you got to train the boy, and then he passes away.
Yeah, and he passes away, and then
another example.
Typical,
they
movie
zoom out,
death.
but what happens after they cut?
Exactly. So, but what happened is my mom actually like made like a fart noise with her mouth, like when Qui-Gon died, and to this day I can't imagine how many fucking Star Wars nerds like are just like this is gonna be stuck with them forever. Like that might have been their first day watching.
Oh, she
this
did it
movie.
in the theater?
Yeah.
That's great.
So
I have something to add to that. When I saw The Force Awakens for like the second time with a group of friends that hadn't seen it before, there was this little kid in like the back row of the front section, and when the little yellow alien lady takes off her goggles and you see her like butthole eyes, that kid goes, "Ew." It was like a really somber moment in the movie too, but I was just laughing my ass off. So it's like,
good.
that's the reaction you should be having. That's fucking
That's
awful
gross.
to look at. Yeah, it's just that's all I got. I mean, that's all I got without spending 3 hours on this, because I love this movie so much. I could literally just go on and on and on about it. Like, it's one of those where you're disappointed that you didn't have anything to do with it besides watching it.
Sure. Yeah, it's a fantastic film from every aspect you can possibly think of. It works so well. It's one of those, it is a gem in itself, and it's it's a longer movie, but it's one of those ones that I forgive, because it's like I'm totally wrapped up in it the whole time. It's so engaging, and just the pacing of everything that happens, it definitely doesn't make it feel like it's that long. It feels like it's fast.
Right.
But there's a lot of ground that is covered. But it's a fantastic film, definitely one of the Sandman's best. And for those that haven't watched it, if you're listening to this at this point, I mean, still watch it.
There's no hope left for you, but still watch the movie.
But still watch it. You'll still love
well,
it.
We should also discuss, there's one aspect that we haven't talked about, which is the fact that this is a movie starring Adam Sandler.
Mm-hmm.
But it is not his normal movie.
So you think people
that's the
went
reason
thinking...
why like he doesn't get accepted as much in the like prestige circles, but also like let's not forget the actual Adam Sandler fans' reaction to this movie when it came out. They did not like it, Jordan. They were like, it's just like loud and fast, and everyone's shouting at each other. There's no,
That's
standard
an Adam
coverage of people standing around talking and lightly improvising bad jokes.
People shouting at each other. That is an Adam Sandler movie. What are they talking about?
But it's not happening every 5 seconds,
Adam Sandler's shouting an awful lot in every fucking Happy Madison movie I've ever seen.
But that's my point, is that it's not a Happy Madison movie.
No,
it's like
not.
gritty, and
it's an actual
no
movie,
one gets
yeah.
along in this movie. Like, really.
No.
Even Howard and his girlfriend don't get along. So,
but it is funny though. It's just funny in a different way. It's a more more.
It's a black comedy for sure. Very dark comedy.
Yeah, it's a dark comedy, but it's a bit more like you're mixing in the comedy with these dramatic scenes and stuff.
But I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's not for everyone, and it's probably not for the average Adam Sandler fan that just goes and sees like Murder Mystery 2 or whatever whenever it's shat onto Netflix.
If you liked Jack and Jill, then you're probably going to hate this.
If you liked Jack and Jill, I hope you're in a mental asylum right now and not listening to this podcast. And, I think maybe that we would have gotten more of this from The Sandman in the last 5 years had the pandemic not come along. And it became more about like, I'm just going to keep doing the movies that make me a shitload of money for my family. And, the prestige stuff maybe more or less will continue. But I think maybe he did like a Noah Baumbach movie after this. I can't remember if that was before or after this, but I would like him to not make Murder Mystery 3 or Hubie Halloween 2 or whatever the fuck. Because do you remember when this movie was coming out and they were about to announce the Oscar nominations, and he said, if I don't get nominated for an Oscar for this, I'm going to make the worst movie you've ever seen. and he made Hubie Halloween or something like that. But it's like he was already in production on a movie when he said that. So
you got to give the man credit for staying true to his word, though. He really followed through with the worst movie ever. But
it's also like not really an accomplishment because it's like, yeah, we know.
Yeah,
we know you're capable of that.
Yeah,
it's when you show us the stuff that we didn't think you were capable of, like Punch Drunk Love or Uncut Gems, that we're actually impressed or will notice.
Have you seen that other basketball movie that he did?
Oh yeah,
recently.
Hustle. I forgot completely about that. Yeah. I think that movie only exists because Sandler couldn't get over the fact that he was done making Uncut Gems and wanted to keep going in that vein.
Keep going.
And
I guess
actually, there was supposed to be like a follow-up, a spiritual follow-up to this that fell apart because it was going to be the Safdie brothers and Sandler reuniting for another movie that had a similar type character, but it was more to do with like high-end Pokemon cards or like trading cards, like baseball cards that are like, mint and signed or whatever.
Right.
Like another high-end, high-stakes trading world, like. And then that just didn't end up happening because now the Safdie brothers are separate filmmakers for the time being. So maybe that'll still happen. But I think it was somewhat recently that they announced that movie is on ice or just like not happening for the foreseeable future. So,
well, I mean, I would love to see more Adam Sandler movies where he's playing
Sandler.
More safty Adam Sandler movies, because obviously this is it's a perfect combination. It's a perfect formula to get really, really good stuff. But I mean, it's a testament, I think, even more so to the Safdies, because like they've proven so mate times that they can get these performances out of the people that you would expect it the least from. Because like the whole world also kind of has this, residual hate on for Robert Pattinson. And he fucking nailed it in Good Time.
I think less so. I think Good Time and Batman won him back a lot of goodwill.
Sure, yeah.
Not that he had a lot to start with, but
The Lighthouse as well.
I mean, can you say he had goodwill coming out of Goblet of Fire? Maybe.
I always forget that he's even in those movies.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I always forget that David Tennant is in that movie specifically. The doctor. He's like.
Oh right.
You find out the whole movie that he's shapeshifted to be like Mad Eye Moody, which means he kept drinking that like gray shape-shifting fluid like every single day,
right?
Probably multiple times a day with how little that which is just disgusting.
It's gross.
But yeah, so I guess we can wrap this episode up by saying that no matter who you piss off in life, no matter what you accomplish or don't accomplish, when you die, your intestines release all of the shit that's inside of your body. So we're all basically the same. So don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Just be yourself.
Your greatest
We're all the
accomplishments
same
will
in the
mean
end.
nothing while your pants are filled with your own excrement.
Right. And then and after that, you'll be brain food or you'll be food for worms, in the dirt. Unless you're cremated, in which case I don't think
I like the
ashes are
idea
food
of
for any
people
creature.
becoming brain food for worms. Like it's making the worms smarter.
The worms are absorbing your. It's like that movie. What was the one where it's like the rom-com but with the zombies, Warm Bodies?
Oh
with
yeah,
Nicholas Holt.
Yeah, Nicholas Holt.
When
yeah.
he's eating the brains from the people, he's like getting their memories.
Right,
But it's like
yeah.
making him more human because they
the
were
worms,
still. Yeah.
the worms are doing that. Like, oh my god.
No, if worms are making anyone smarter, it's RFK Jr., which is why you should vote. No, I'm just kidding. We're done with politics.
Hey, this is a political podcast.
Well, no.
We
not
told you
anymore.
last time.
There's no politics in Uncut Gems. Only Tom York. So we're done.
Right.
Until we're not again.
Until we're not.
Whatever we discuss in the future that requires us to go back to. So anyway,
Cool. Well, hey,
we did it.
We did it. Thanks.
I want to give
for
a shout out
listening.
to Coca-Cola for
Coca-Cola.
basically, putting me on Howard's level. I felt like after a certain point I started channeling Howard and was just like, let's get through this. And I feel
I felt it.
succeeded.
It helped.
Yeah.
So you have to do that every single episode now.
Well, I can't promise that I will, but I think it should also be reserved for projects that require it for the discussion. So if we discuss something like Satan Tango, I'm just going to take a bunch of Ambien and
Sure. Yeah.
just a bunch of
you'd
downers.
have to act accordingly, I suppose. Drug yourself accordingly.
Right. So, yeah, thanks for watching / listening. We'll be back next month with Jordan's picks on an album and a movie.
And a movie.
Should we even bother saying what they are, or should we wait until we know for sure?
Well, because
let them figure it out?
Our podcast is so unpredictable, even to us, the people that make it, I think we'll all find out at the same time next month.
Sounds good. All right. That's
All
going
right.
to do it.
Adios, amigos.
Peace out. And
Later, homies.
don't kill the president. Please. Just whatever you
Please.
do. Thanks.
Don't do it.